Good morning. Thanks for coming. Today, I'll try to share my experiences of the practice and try to help kind of explain how your lifestyle and everything that you do helps the practice and how the practice helps everything else. And, what are the things you can do to help uh, keep your practice or sustain your practice. Also, we'll touch upon, I've had several people saying I have pain, this and that. I'm not able to practice. The practice is too demanding. I feel like Ashtanga is not made for me and stuff like that. So I just want to kind of touch upon those topics as well. So we'll talk a little bit in depth about pain. I also have my daily diet that I will share at the end. So it'll kind of give an idea of you know, what are the things that I have and how it has helped me, and maybe that'll give you some ideas on, what you can do. Okay, and um, and then we'll open up for questions. All right, so let's go and get started. So the agenda for the day, the talk will focus on Ashtanga and Vipassana. That is what we teach here, the Ashtanga Yoga. And style of meditation called Vipassana. So I'll be focusing specifically on them and not on any general practice. So we'll start with talking about why Ashtanga, why Vipassana, and then we'll talk about how, which is the main topic of the day, how to practice. And then I'll just share my diet, because that's been a question that I've been asked several times by several people on, what do you eat? I do eat, so I'll just share whatever I eat here. Right. So why Ashtanga? For me, it's very simple. And why Ashtanga and Vipassana? It's very simple. It's yoga body, Buddha mind. Trying to bring the best of the two worlds in terms of the philosophies, in terms of their approaches. I think Buddha personified clarity of mind, having compassion, having the right mindsets to lead a comfortable, conflict free life. And the Ashtanga practice does the same thing for the body to try and make sure you lead a disease free life to the extent possible. And more than disease free, also lead a productive life. So, if you want to do something, you should be able to do it. Your body should be able to do what you want to do. So, to get yourself ready for that, and then also work with your mind. That's literally why I teach Ashtanga and Vipassana. Both are challenging. There is nothing, there is no easy, when you do Ashtanga and you feel it's challenging, sit in a Vipassana session and then you'll realize, right, that the Ashtanga is so much more easier compared to sitting for hours together, working with your own mind and trying to, arrive at how your mind is working. Right. So both are very challenging. Both are long-term practices. These are not for people who are thinking, okay, let me try something for 1 month and see. In 1 month, only your pain will increase. That's it. With both the practices, your mind also will just blow up, and your body also will break down. Right. So this is a long-term practice. This is not for, I'll go to a yoga class, just become flexible in 2 months and come back. It's not like that. If you come to this Ashtanga in 2 months, like I had a student um, who just joined a week back. I think after that first day, she said a little bit pain here and there. I said that that's okay. 2 3 days it'll come down. And next day she came and she said, sir, the pain is a little bit more. And I said, keep coming as you practice, it'll come down. Third day she said, now whole body is paining. That is what happens. So I don't know where to point at what the pain. Everything is paining. So that's why I said you're fine. Now you have started the practice. Whole body should pain first, because it's about trying to get feedback from the body as to how you're treating it. So it's important to take that feedback and work with it. So both are very challenging systems. Um, and it's very important as far as I'm concerned. The reason why Ashtanga is very important to have a Vipassana with an Ashtanga practice, as far as I'm concerned, because a lot of the Ashtanga practice is very focused on form, on body. So there is a natural tendency to feel that, hey, I have a great body. There's a lot of tendency to build on ego, build on a fact that you're stronger, you're better, you're more flexible. That is not the focus of this at all, right? The focus of the practice is to build a healthy body, a strong body, so that you can be kinder to people, right? So that you can be more compassionate to the world around you, so that you can think better, think more in terms of everything that's happening, and have a broader mind. And that is where Vipassana comes in. Vipassana is something that focuses on your mind, tries to take away, purify your mind, right? That's the objective of the Vipassana practice. And that is why I feel, Ashtanga always, needs a counterbalance. And that is Vipassana, right? So that is the practice here, right? So, all right. So let's go a little bit into the practice, into, the practical aspects of how to. Um, and this is fairly simple. I put a pyramid there because I wanted to kind of show what sits on what and what is most important. Um, and I feel the most important thing in the entire practice is the mindset. Everything is dependent on the mindset that you have, right? If you feel this is a lot of students come to me and say, okay, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do that. You're asking me to do this, that. There is a resistance. The moment you have in your mind, you feel you cannot do something, there is no way your body will be able to do it. Please understand that your mindsets determine everything, not just what we do in your yoga practice, but what happens in your life, right? Mano pubbangama dhamma. That's the first quote, first statement that the Buddha made in the Dhammapad. It says, your mind precedes all experiences. Whatever you're experiencing around you, whether it's your practice, whether it's life, whatever it is, the mind precedes that. The mind is what tells you what you're seeing, how you experience things, who are the people you meet, who are the people you interact with. All of that, the mind dictates. So mindsets become extremely important. The first thing you need to look at is the mindset. And we'll talk a little bit about what are those. And on mindset is your lifestyle. And I've put diet separately, though diet can be thought of as part of lifestyle. But it's important to have a lifestyle that is in some way, repeatable, sustainable, um, easy on you, right? So a few things about lifestyle, right? When we'll talk about that in detail. So the primary thing is your mindset, then it's your lifestyle, then it's your diet, and then it's the practice. If the practice sits on top of these things and sits comfortably, then the practice percolates back into your diet, percolates back into your lifestyle, percolates back into your mind. And the mindset once again strengthens your diet, strengthens your practice. And so there is a healthy interaction going. So that is very important to understand. The practice is a small portion. No, the 1 hour of practice that you do is a small portion. If the rest of the day, what you do is countering what you do in your practice, then doing the practice does not help. If the rest of the day is assisting what you do at the practice, then the practice takes you forward. Otherwise, you go 10 steps back, and next day in the practice, you come 1 step forward. And during the day, you go 10 steps back again. and then you take one step forward, then 10 steps back, right? So it's very important to understand that the mindsets, your lifestyle, and your diet are more important or equally important to your practice, and they should feed your practice, and your practice should feed back into that. That's very, very important to understand. And even research, right? Most of the research shows that most of your diseases are caused 80% by diet, are addressed 80% by diet and only 20% by exercise. There are different estimates, between 15 and 25 as the impact of exercise on a person's health, right? So at the most 25%, 30%, let's say yoga does a little bit more, right? Sometimes we don't like Western research, right? So maybe 30%. Right? But still, diet is an extremely important, diet, lifestyle, mindsets are extremely important. Then they contribute to the majority of your, of your overall disease-free body. Right? So let's look at what are the mindsets. When I say mindsets, I'm not just saying some random stuff. There are a few things that I think are very important. One is to be non-judgmental. And this is very important for your Vipassana practice, very important for your yoga practice. To be non-judgmental, firstly about yourself. The moment you become non-judgmental about yourself, you stop judging others as well, right? Because the whole judging thing goes away, and you start, being more trying to understand, how people are approaching. So it's very, very important to be non-judgmental about things. Have a mindset of observing, right? Rather than saying I cannot do something, you can say today I'm not able to do it. Makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference as to how you phrase what is happening in your life to yourself. How you tell your mind the story of your life. That's very important. We are a product of the stories that we have told ourselves. And you tell a slightly different story, your body will radiate that. Your mind will radiate that. You'll change. So it's very important to be able to do that. Rather than being judgmental, be more observatory. Just say, okay, maybe today I'm not able to do it. Today, sometimes your practice is amazing. Sometimes your practice is really bad, right? And I'm sure if anybody has practiced for a year or more, you will know that every day, the body is not the same every day. There are days where you will feel so light into whatever, and there are days where your first Surya Namaskar is not happening. Even at the end, even Sirsasana, you're wobbling. Everything is just a wobbling day, and that happens, right? You are not a product of either that or this, right? So learn to be less judgmental about things. Learn to just be observe. You just say enjoy a day when you have a great practice, and just let go a day that you have a poor practice, and that's it. You don't have to think too much about it. What you need to think about is how do I get back on the mat and practice the next day. That's the only thing you need to think about, right? Because there will be good days, there will be bad days, and there will be, on average, you'll have an average day, right? So that's kind of what it is. So it's to be non-judgmental. And the other thing is to be experimental. There are so many advices out there. If you Google for what should I do if I have whatever, if I have back pain, there is, I don't know, there's maybe 10,000 pages of results of people having written about what you should do for back pain. What is most important for you is to pick what works for you, right? Just not go somewhere, do something, but start experimenting with yourself, because what is most important is self-knowledge, to understand where your body is, where your mind is, and how do you work with it. So be experimental. Don't listen. Even if I say something, and I keep saying this all the time, even when I give advice, is to go for you to experiment and see if it works for you. If it doesn't, discard it. Just because I am saying, or just because somebody else is saying, to follow that is to basically neutralize your own wisdom. You cannot run your life on somebody else's wisdom, right? Because he'll have a bad day as well. Please understand, everybody is a human being and everybody has their great days and their bad days, right? You may think, okay, I'm a teacher, but I have a lot of body pain too, right? Right. So I have learned to work with it. And sometimes, there are times when I'm in class and, I don't think I can walk. And it's not unreal. I've had, when other teachers have taught this class, I've asked them if they have experience, and they've said the same thing. I've talked to a lot of teachers, and they've said the same thing. Sometimes it's impossible to come to class. You get up and you feel your whole body is broken because of, helping students, whatever you do, and especially when you're doing dropbacks, helping folks, and all. It's not. It looks nice, but you should do it for a few people to understand what it takes, right? So you start working with those, right? You start working with those, and you start understanding them, being experimental, and slowly you overcome the obstacles only by your own wisdom. Please understand, you have to find your path. There is no path in yoga, in vipassana. This is not a paved path. This is where you work on your path. There is nothing that, at the best, what a teacher can do is either be an inspiration or give you guidance on what are the things that you may experiment with. And sometimes that's a catalyst. Sometimes you're hitting down the wrong path and the teacher sees it and says, okay, maybe it's not that, you do this. Sometimes it just solves the problem. Right? So those are the reasons why you need a teacher. Otherwise, you don't need. These are not paths that you need teachers for. These are paths that are very self-exploratory. So you just have to work with yourself. Work harder. When you hit a roadblock, work harder. That's it. Or be a little smart. Try to find out why it is. Sometimes you talk to a person who is more experienced. He may give you an idea. He or she may give you an idea which will help you overcome that. That's literally what a teacher is trying to do here, is to try and just guide you through the process. Right? But that's very important to understand, that you need to retain your wisdom through the practice. Retain your intelligence through the practice. Don't follow anyone for what they're saying. See, apply it, be honest in your experimentation. If it works for you, take it in. If it doesn't, that's fine. Right? So be open about that. The other thing is being determined. When I say determined, this is Hatha Yoga. Ashtanga, this is part of the Hatha Yoga practice. Hatha is what? Hatha is determination. The whole yoga is called a yoga of determination. Why is there Hatha required? Because body is paining. When mind is paying, every day morning you have to get up. Before you get up, you think, should I really go to class today? Just half an hour more, I can sleep, right? I'm telling you, the mattress is a horrible companion, right? It just kills you. So find ways to be determined to say, okay, today, I'm not feeling like it. Maybe I'll do a shorter practice, but get on the mat. Spend time, because you may feel, reluctant till you get into that room, and then you see 10 other people practicing. Automatically, that mindset is gone. So the difficulty is to get up and get your body to walk up or drive up to the class. After that, everything is taken care. You'll see somebody trying something in class, you'll not be able to sit down. You'll do something as well, right? So just do that. Sometimes you're in, you feel there's a lot of pain. Come in and do what you can do, right? It's very important. So that is determination. Determination to firstly overcome, the tamas, or the laziness that your mind is, used to, that your mind and body are used to that, you know, let me do it tomorrow. I'll join a yoga class on the first of the month, right? And the first becomes a Sunday, then you have to wait one more month, right? And then it's, it's like that. It's ongoing, right? So that procrastination is a permanent process, and that's why a lot of the times when I built my practice, um, and I'm still building it. When I've built my practice, a lot of the times I've done my practice after a long day at 11:30 in the night before I sleep. So 11:30 to 1, and then I go to sleep because I said today I'm not going to miss my practice for at any cost, right? So you need to have a determination to do that, even if it's 10 minutes sometimes, even if it's because there is a lot of benefit in the practice, right? So that mindset is extremely important. And so when I sometimes I work, my work gets used to get late. So if it's so late that I feel maybe 2:30 in the morning, I cannot get up. I just finish my practice and sleep. So I'm done. I don't need to get up. I can get up at 4:30 and come to class. Right. So yeah. So there is a lot of ways in which you work with yourself to understand how much you can push yourself and what you can do. And you can do that only through determination and finding your own, you know, limits. And be fearless. That a lot of people say if you do this, something will happen, this will happen, that thing will happen. Worst case, anytime, all of us are guaranteed to die. So worst case is death. That's it. Nothing will happen. I'm telling you, right? You don't have to be fearful at all, because that stops a lot of our practice. A lot of experimentation stops because, so even with diet, I've seen a lot of people saying, no, 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 I don't think I can give that thing up. But that student will tell me all the symptoms that the diet is bringing. He says, "Oh, I have gas. I have this. I have my whole skin is breaking up." And I say, "Okay, give up a little bit of dairy." No, 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 no. So this is what happens, right? So it's difficult if you're not fearless to experiment, to find a solution, right? So be fearless and be dispassionate. That's very important. Sometimes you have a great practice, don't get attached to it. Sometimes you have a really horrible practice, don't get attached to that either. Okay, it's it's part of life. Some days you'll have a great practice, some days you'll have a bad practice, and that's just what it is. Right? Be dispassionate. The more you build this in your practice, the more you will see it outside as well in your life. When you are working, sometimes a person is your co-worker is irritating you. You'll start learning, okay, this is like a bad practice, today is a bad practice. Okay, ignore that. And sometimes your manager says you're the best employee, ignore that as well, right? Don't get excited about it. All of those will happen. Be patient, right? A lot of the times people students say, sir, you have not taught me this asana, you've not taught me that, what is this, where is that? Trust me, I want to teach you everything I know so that you can move forward. But when I see you doing, I know how much you can do, right? If I have not taught you, there is a reason. And the only reason is that I don't want to break you down. That's all. There's no other reason for me not teaching you something. Okay. So just be a little patient. And when you feel you want to do, you want to learn something new, just take a couple of pictures of what you're doing earlier. It'll give you enough feedback to go improve what you're doing. Okay. So whenever I look at the pictures that I post, I always feel, so many things that can improve in those. And so I don't constantly go and do a new practice. I rarely do a new asana. Very rare. It's really, I should feel that day that I want to do something. Otherwise, I have a practice that I just stick with. And sometimes I feel, okay, today maybe I post something on Instagram and do a new asana that day. This is very rare. I don't experiment too much with my practice. Of course, I practice sometimes for very long or short and stuff like that. But I don't just go out and experiment with different asanas. I say, okay, today YouTube, what is this lady doing? Let me do that. No, I don't do that. And I generally never do that. I work with my body. I know what my strengths are. I know where I struggle, and I work with those. And the areas of weakness are what I work on. I know that within my practice there are a lot of things that can be improved. I just work on them within the practice, right? Within Surya Namaskars, I can tell all of you have an opportunity to improve within the Surya Namaskar. So you don't even need to go to Padangusthasana, right? So it's important to be patient, um, dispassionate, equanimous, and kind. These are very important things in a way. When equanimity is where you feel, irrespective of what is changing, you try to feel equal to everything that's happening around you. And to be kind first to your body and mind and to others, right? It's very important. Without these things, nothing works. If you're not kind to the person next to you, even if he's struggling, if somebody is angry, be kind to them. If somebody is irritated, they don't need your anger, they need your kindness, right? So very, very important to inculcate kindness when somebody is, you know, frustrated, or when, when you see something that's not working, be kind, because maybe they're going through a bad day, maybe they're going through a bad phase. So be kind to people, be kind to the environment, be kind to things around you, be kind to living beings around you. When you see an ant, don't quash it. Everything has a right to life, just like you have. Be kind, move it around, right? So be compassionate and be kind. So let's take a look at the lifestyle aspect. The first thing is to rest. When I say rest your body, you'll generally get some sleep, 5, 6 hours maybe. But importantly, rest your mind. It is when your mind is not rested that is when you lose sleep, right? When your body is, typically you work, you do your practice, it's enough. Your body is work, you work during the day, it's enough to give you good sleep. But your mind is active, constantly active, thinking about this, thinking about that. So you don't get any rest. You sleep, you get up, you still get up groggy, you get up with, okay, should I go to class today? Should I go to work today? Why am I working? Why am I, those kinds of questions will come when you're not properly rested. So very important to rest your mind, even more important to, very important to rest your body, even more important to rest your mind, right? So when you do a mind practice, when you do meditation, that is what you're doing. You're trying to train the mind to be able to go to rest. A lot of the times when you go to sleep, there are techniques to sleep. If you just start observing your breathing and calm your mind down, maybe just a couple of minutes, you'll go to sleep. And sometimes people say, I've been on the bed half an hour, 1 hour, sir, I'm not getting sleep. It's just observe your breathing. Either, see, there are two reasons you may not get sleep. One is you're too lazy, meaning the body is not done any activity, so you don't deserve to sleep. Go and do something, right? And the other is you're not rested in your mind. And for that, all you need to do is just rest your mind, observe your mind. So if you're feeling that, okay, I'm not getting sleep when I sleep, just do a few Surya Namaskars, do some Tetibhasana A, B, enough. One drop back, you'll sleep, right? So that's it. Sometimes it's just the lack of activity also, because you've been resting too much. Your body is not doing anything, you'll not get sleep. If you work through the day, the moment you look at your bed, that's it, over. Typically, when I'm kind of a person who's like 15 minutes before I go to bed only, I'm you know, groggy, talking all nonsense. Somebody says you just go to sleep, then that's when I stop. It's like a kid, but it's like that. So I'm ready by 8 or 9 in the night. So it's just the amount of work you do. Physically, there is amount of work you do, and mentally, trying to rest yourself, trying to be calm with yourself. There's just only two reasons. You don't need to take any. I see people taking medication for sleep. Um, that's kind of bordering on absurdity, because if you just work your body, if you just run, instead of taking that medicine, just run till you fall, you'll sleep there only. It doesn't matter. You don't need to take any medication, right? Sometimes things are so stupid, right? So, stress, right? Having a balance social with what you do, your activities and your work. Typically, optimize these areas to reduce the stress you carry, right? I have a separate talk on stress, which is something that I've recorded as well. And I think I may have shared it earlier. Just before I went to Vipassana, I shared some talk. There's a talk on stress specifically. You can listen to that. Habits, another part of lifestyle. Overcome addictions to anything. I mean, when I say addictions, it's not just smoking or anything like that. Addiction to anything. If you say, okay, no, I have to have, I say, sir, I have to have something by 8 o'clock. It's nothing like that, really. I have to do this, otherwise it's a problem. No, it's nothing like that. Some days you don't do a yoga practice. If you feel that at some point, if I don't do a yoga practice, I cannot be peaceful and happy, then you're setting yourself up for failure. You should be peaceful and happy, and hence do the practice, right? And the practice should feed back into being peaceful and happy. So don't get addicted even to the practice. Do the practice because you want to do the practice, because you see a reason to do the practice. And that's why it's important to not get addicted to any process. Right? Be a little distance from whatever you're doing. Okay, today you eat at some time, tomorrow, one day you may get a headache. You say, oh, if I don't have coffee at 5:30 in the morning, I get a headache. Of course, because 30 years you've been having it. Don't have it for 2 weeks, the headache also will pass. Right? It's just a matter of getting used to certain things. And develop, sometimes developing useful habits. I don't like this, but developing useful habits help. Right? I am not I'm not a person who recommends specific habits per se. But if you are too volatile in your life and it's too many fluctuations, then having a habit of doing certain things, getting up early or doing a practice after in the morning, those things can help. Having a certain diet can help, right? Moderation, everything, right? I see some students that one day they come, practice like crazy, and then I don't see them for another 15 days. Next, they come again. Like, shall I do? I'll do everything, sir. Okay, you can do everything, but then it's not how much you can do at all. It's the consistency of it. I'd rather have a person practice for 30 minutes every day than 4 hours a day and not practice for another 15 days. Right? It's better to practice a minimum set every day, because that's much more beneficial. What you do that day, you will reap the benefits of it. Right? Next day, it's all gone. Right? So it's important to do nothing in excess and try to distribute. Okay, now let's take a look at weight loss. Okay, so first, most important part of the diet is the mindset again. Right? So I'm a foodie. That is good for Instagram, not for life. Right? I'm a foodie. I have to dig into this. You really don't need to, because most of what you eat is junk. Right? Don't dig into junk, because what happens is when you eat junk, that is what comes out of you. Right? So what you eat, you become. If you eat junk, you become. Right? So eat to live. Right? Don't live to eat. There are so many other things to do. Eating is just, a very small portion. Let food be thy medicine. There's another saying, I couldn't get it. If you don't eat food as medicine, you'll start eating medicine as your food. Right? That's what will happen. If you don't take food in measured quantities, then somebody will measure 25 pills and give it to you, saying, okay, you take all of this, sir. For you to live another day, you need all of this. Right? So you'll have one plate and then one other plate of medicines. Right? If you don't want to, then it's important to have a measured intake. Hmm? To keep the body in good health is a duty. Otherwise, we shall not be able to keep our mind strong and clear. It's very important to understand this. That if your body, if you're, if you're not able to do anything in your body, it's very difficult to develop a mind that is calm and clear and can be compassionate and kind to others, things like that. So it's very important to take care of your body. Very important to be uh, conscious of what is going in and how it is affecting you, because that helps you develop your mind as well. Right? So it's very, very important to do that. So I have some suggestions. All of these are suggestions again. So a time, generally, I would say eat during the day for diet. During the day is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. maybe, right? And try to avoid. I mean, sometimes you have a long day and you've not been able to eat in the evening, and you say you get back at 10 o'clock in the night. Don't try to eat stuff. That's not a time to eat. It's time to sleep. Just go to sleep. That's it. If you really feel, oh my God, if I don't eat, I won't be able to sleep, maybe have a fruit, maybe have a half of a fruit, maybe have some water. Don't have milk, please, before you sleep. But have, if you really feel you need to eat after dark, just have a fruit, have a half of a fruit. Right? Just have water or something, maybe, I don't know, a ginger tea or something. And not, when I say tea, herb tea, not with milk and all, just water and ginger. Something simple, right? Something that you feel is filling you, but it's really not. Don't you say, oh, I'm super tired now. Don't eat. Super tired, you sleep. Because that's what your body is asking, right? I've not had dinner. That's a great thing to do, skipping dinner. So why force yourself just before sleeping, get your whole digestive system active, and then try to sleep? And then complain, oh, I've had a very horrible sleep. It's all disturbed. Because your whole body is active. You ate, and your body has to figure out how to digest it and do things. So your mind is going to be active. You will not get sleep. You say, I am eating, but I'm not getting sleep. Of course, you're eating. That is why you're not getting sleep. I've had a lot of students who have asked to fast. Sometimes when a student specifically tells me some things, I may ask a student to fast. And most of the times the student has come back and said, after fasting, I'm getting much better sleep. And this is across the board. I have seen it with myself. When I do the Vipassana, I mean, last month we did a Vipassana day. We'll probably also do it next week. We'll do it once a month at some point. That if you don't eat, your meditation is far better, right? We put out a breakfast because I don't want people to complain. This guy is, first of all, calling me at 8, 6 o'clock, not letting me out till 12, doesn't even provide breakfast. I would like to not provide anything, honestly. If you ask me, it's nothing. You just come and meditate. Right? But then, it's, compassion overtakes me. Okay, at least have something to eat. But if you don't have anything to eat, you meditate much better. Your body is much lighter. Your thoughts are much clearer. You'll see the connection between your eating and your mindset straight away. If you're meditating at different times of the day, you'll straight away see the difference between meditating after a meal, meditating before a meal, meditating when you've not had something for 4 hours. Makes a big difference, right? So avoid, when you can avoid. It's not, you don't have to, like 1 o'clock, I have to eat, nothing like that. If you're hungry, eat. Sometimes you feel like skipping, skip a meal. There's, absolutely not a problem. Content. Okay, we come to this as well. I talk a little bit about being vegan, right? I definitely avoid, I don't know, ghee, butter, fats, oils. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. Very simple. Right? If you see fat on your body, don't ask me where it came from. Whatever you ate it comes and sits in different places. That's it. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. Very simple, right? So if you are eating fat, you have to be able to have the activity level to burn that. Fats are stores, right? It's very important. If the body stores in fat, right? So if you are having something, then if you ask me, just skip. So it can use up the store, right? When you have something in store, use it up. It's very important. Otherwise, it starts becoming a disease for you. If you have something in store for very long and you've not cleaned it, you've not used it, you've not gone and seen it, you'll see all dirt, dust, even in a simple storeroom. You just lock some things up and leave it there for 6 months. And you see all kinds of dust and termites and all kinds of things overcoming that. It's the same thing that happens with your body. In your body, it shows up as disease. Fat is very important to cut down. I keep saying this. I don't know whatever diet you follow, cut down on fat. Have basic fats a little bit. Otherwise, it should mostly be. We'll talk about what your diet should be later. But cut down on fats, big time. I ask literally every student I go to, I say cut down ghee. First thing, especially yoga and Ayurveda are related. So he says, sir, Ayurveda told me that ghee is good. Maybe they didn't have research at that point, right? Maybe 1,000 years ago, whoever wrote that article, which all of you are following without experimenting, maybe the research was not present, because it's very clear that having fats, especially dairy fats, have a lot of issues, cause a lot of diseases. So next week I'll bring a few books and I'll keep it there for you to go read about the side effects of having dairy. I'm not asking all of you to convert, but I want you to have the mindset to experiment, reduce where you can. So when you look at something, at least be able to categorize your food and saying, okay, this is grain, this is vegetable, this is fruit, this is protein, this is fat. Just at least learn to categorize. When you see ghee, think of fat. When you see curd, think of fat. When you see milk, think of fat. And then look at yourself. Oh, I'm fat enough. No. Right? That's it. It's a very simple thing. What you don't have, you consume. What you have, don't consume. Right? It's a very straightforward process. But you just need to have, a little bit of dispassion to do that. Quantity, right? Only eat 2/3 or 3/4 of your capacity all the time. Don't eat full. Your stomach, you have to produce the acids. Your stomach has to do. Think about your stomach. Right? Think about your body. Think about, how are you going to digest what you eat? And not just whatever, okay, let me just eat and go a nice South Indian meal, just eat everything. What happens? Your whole body is struggling after that. You may be happy, your tongue is saying great, great. Then your body, you should look at your stomach and ask what happened, right? So just look at your whole body. Just don't look at only your tongue, right? Just look at your whole body and see what's happening to all of the stuff that I'm eating, right? So eat about 2/3 or 3/4 of your capacity, right? Because there is very important to leave some space for processing. It's very, very important, right? So leave some space in the stomach for the acids to process, for the gas to form, to start the digestive process. You can look at any research that talks about how much you should eat. There is no recommendation of more than 3/4. I ate my heart's content. Heart disease is what you will get, right? Heart's content is nothing there. There is stomach only. Whatever you eat goes to the stomach. Heart is what the tongue is telling you. Ignore that. right? And some discipline. Try to create a window and say, okay, I'll not eat. And sometimes you just say, I'll not eat after 7 p.m. At house, you'll say, oh, you've been working since morning. Okay, let me sleep. Right? You have to have a counter for every social interaction that you have. Because, that's what every social interaction, every relationship is built on food, especially in, Eastern cultures. It's absolutely crazy. Not only you eat bad, you make the other person also eat bad. You say, okay, let me have disease. Maybe let me spread that also. Right? So don't do that. Isolate yourself in your diet. It's okay if others around you are not able to follow or not able to appreciate. Protect yourself first, because only when you protect yourself and build a healthy diet, then you can circulate that across, right? So it's important to isolate and protect your diet. Sometimes you feel, okay, you're tired, long day, fast and just sleep off. Get up early in the morning, 2 o'clock, you can have something, because you'll be awake during the day. There's some, digestive system is active, have something, right? So change the way you think about food. It's very important. Don't go with old habits. I would say strongly prefer whole food, plant-based nutrition. When I say this, whole food, we'll maybe go a little deep into that a separate day, because the whole food concept itself is not just kind of easy to get until you start experimenting with it. But try to prefer a plant-based nutrition. At least 80% of your nutrition should come from plant-based. Maybe at the most, I have not written here, but at the most 10-20% can come from meat and dairy. To the extent, avoid both. To the extent possible, avoid both meat and dairy. If you need to, let it be 10%, 20% of your diet, right? Not more than that. I kind of recommend avoiding both. And this is the U.S. Department of Agriculture's recommendation. If you see that the one in red is fruits, not able to see. The one in orange is grains. Is that purple? That's protein, and the one in green is vegetables. And there's a story about this. Earlier they would put dairy also as part of it, but then there was a lot of research. A lot of the research is quite categorical that dairy and meat have a lot of issues with cancers, a lot of issues with a lot of the problems you have, diseases that you have, right? So it's better to try and go more and more from wherever you are. It's not like you need to change today, and changing overnight is never recommended. I always say, take time, take 2 years or maybe take 5 years to change your diet, right? Put a long-term ramp, but start cutting down, right? Don't do a switch. Switches don't work typically, because it's not, your body is used to something. Tomorrow you don't eat it, you'll start craving, and you don't have enough control over your mind. So at the wrong time, 8 o'clock in the night, you'll be hungry and you'll gorge on all kinds of things, saying, okay, this whole thing is not working. And then, the whole thing is gone. Don't do that. Put design a ramp that's a little long. You take your time. Cut down the foods that are the easiest to cut down in the category of meat and dairy, and then start seeing what difference it makes to your body, and then make progress, right? So always don't do overnight switches. Yeah, some watch outs. This is something that I always put up. Dairy and meat consumption, reduce. Alcohol, reduce. Because they impair decision making, right? Okay. Now let's come to the practice. So the practice is, of Ashtanga and Vipassana. It's a body and a mind practice. For the body, basically, we do asanas, we do some kriyas, bandhas, and I'm just giving some very high-level stuff. For your mind, you do meditation. Of course, when you do asana, it also helps your mind. When you do your mind work, it also helps your body. There is interaction, but primary areas of focus. right? So how do you do your practice? For asana, typically before you do a yoga practice, be on an empty stomach. If you're doing early morning, try to not eat anything. If you really feel, you're low on energy early in the morning, you can have a fig or a couple of raisins or things, something that's very light, but more, just carbohydrates kind of thing, just little bit, not a bowl of rice. It's just like one fig, something very little to just keep you going, right? Otherwise, just water is fine. Some people have, like a quarter cup of coffee. I don't recommend that, but it's okay, maybe, right? So empty stomach if you can. And if you're feeling lethargic, a warm bath generally, helps you, become a little bit more. You'll at least wake up, right? So having a bath before your practice definitely helps. If you have a cold bath, it helps even more. But somewhere I have to give some kind of discounted recommendations. So some of these are socially acceptable recommendations. Okay, otherwise you'll not attend whatever class you're attending also. Right? Practice in calm and static surroundings. It's very important. This is practice in a surrounding that's generally calm, and I would say static, because unless you are an advanced practitioner, your surroundings impact you. Please understand. Only don't go to a park and start doing yoga. Don't do that. That's really, I mean, unless you are a really, you're a serious practitioner, you've been practicing for years. Because you go to the park, somebody's seeing, then you want to do a little bit more that day, right? Or somebody went away, then you go there. So it's just you get completely, some bird comes and sits, you start watching it, you forget your practice. So if the environment is changing, unless you have a still mind, where you're saying, okay, whatever comes in front of me, I'm going to finish my practice. Unless you have that determination and the maturity, don't practice in surroundings where there is flux. Very important to practice in like a static environment. I think one of the times I had mentioned that there's just one color that you see when you come in, and that's by design. Right? So I don't want people to see, okay, the 4 or 5 different things. Nothing. When you come in, there are walls for you to just do the handstand. That's it. So it's very important to have minimal interference for your mind when you're practicing, and that is trying to get that in your practice is very important, right? Don't practice with music and stuff like that. Right? I mean, don't put on some light music or whatever music you like and start practicing. No, practice is for your breathing. You want to be able to hear your breathing all the time. You want to be able to focus on your breathing. You want to be able to focus on your mind. You want to understand whether your mind is distracted. You want to understand whether your mind is concentrated that day, whether you're feeling angry, whether you're feeling irritated, whether you're feeling happy. You want to understand that. Don't take that away, right? Don't put on music and start yoga. It's not, they just don't gel with each other. No music gels with any workout, but whatever, right? Focus on your breathing during your practice. It's the most important thing, right? Whatever is wrong with your pose, I'll try to correct it when you're in class. But more than the pose, focus on your breathing. And be accepting and open of during the practice. It's okay. Sometimes you have a bad practice. Like I said, it's okay. Be accepting of what is. In the post practice, I always recommend a cold bath. Right? This really takes away your soreness. Any of the students who have tried a cold bath, any of you who've tried cold bath here, made a difference? It's made a difference. Yeah. So who have you? Oh, now I know who has not tried. I'm always looking for information. But it's important to try a cold bath because it makes a difference. It makes a big difference. I've been practicing for long, and it makes a huge difference between being able to practice the next day and not. Your soreness, it can come down, and if you take a cold bath. And if it's mealtime, yeah, that's whatever, post. Okay. Pain. This is for, for people who feel, you know, sometimes, some part of the body is paining, some injury, something is happening, right? Um, the things that I have found in most cases, right? Firstly, what I would say is find a way to continue your practice. You have pain in your leg, do arm practice, do only inversions. Literally, find a way. There are asanas that are doing so many things. Find a subset of the asanas where you will not feel pain and do that. That's a minimum. That's a start. That's how you continue your practice. Okay, if you have, I've had students come here say, okay, I have back pain. So I say, okay, we don't do these things. Just do a few and that's it. And that's what you do, right? So depending on how you're feeling, don't stop the practice, but continue and do at least a portion of the practice that is compatible with the day. That's very important, right? Find a way to continue because a lot of the times, um, you just I've seen students just give up because you're not ready to explore the pain. Sometimes when it's paining, you should do a full practice just to see what happens. Because I've had, I've done, practices where my where some of the places that is paining, I try to challenge and see what happens. Not in a bad way, but in a way to try and understand what is happening. Where is the limit on this? So that kind of mentality you require, right? So that kind of ability to say, okay, there is a pain. Let me understand it a little bit more. Let me push myself a little bit. That is required. It's very important. If you say, okay, today is pain, tomorrow let me not go to yoga, that's it. That will become your habit. Every time a small pain comes up, you'll not go to yoga. And what happens is your mind is very smart, right? Not in your control. Two things, right? It's smart and it's not in your control. So every 3-4 days, some pain will come up. You say, okay, tomorrow let's not go to yoga. I have pain. This is what, like, when you were a kid, when you didn't want to go to school, you had a headache, right? It's not you got a headache and then you didn't want to go to school, right? You didn't want to go to school and hence you got a headache. You can even get a fever, right? From between 8:45 and 9:15, when your mother wants to check you, there is fever. After that, you can go out to play, no problem. Fever just went. 10:30, everything is fine, right? What is that? That's just the mind playing a trick. But without our knowledge, that trick, we, we continue even after you've, started to work on your own, after you've started to lead your life without the support of your parents, active support. Even then, these tricks continue. When you go to work, you say, oh, today I'm not feeling good at work. Sir, feverish. Over. Huh? Right? Same thing. Mall also. Sorry, you go to the mall. You say feverish, then your manager is also feverish. Both of you meet in the mall. Right? Similar with your yoga practice as well. That is why I'm saying, even with pain, practice. Because you need to understand whether the pain is something you really are experiencing or you're being tricked into. It's very, very important to understand that. And the only way you understand that is to get onto the mat. Because if it's just what you're tricked into, you will be able to do the practice without any problem. A lot of the times you say, oh, I got up with this one, but now I've had a fantastic practice. That is just your mind saying, don't go. Sleep for half an hour more. That's all. Okay, so it's very important to see where the source of the pain is and see the patterns. And that's why, I say, make a determined effort to attend as much as you can. Only when, adjust poses if you need, adjust your practice. Doesn't matter. When you come here, you come to the class and practice. If you do a 15-minute practice and you need to leave, I've never asked anybody, okay, I've never said, oh, now you're in, you're not supposed to leave. No, sometimes I tell people because they're trying to escape. But but if you have an injury, then you can leave. You can just practice for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, and leave. Right? Observe the pain. Right? It's paining. Just learn to observe it. It's very important. Your Vipassana practice is all about that. Observe where is your pain, what is it doing. If it's not getting worse, you can continue your practice. See, it's very important to understand with pain, you have to find 100 different ways to attack the pain, not 100 different ways to submit to the pain. If you say, okay, if it's not going to get any worse, so let me practice. If it gets worse, you can stop. Right? I mean, I've done this several times. I mean, when I have both my meniscus torn, even now it's not going to fix itself. I went to the doctor and he said, okay, you several times earlier I got scans and said, okay, you need to get a surgery. And then for some reason I was not at that point welcoming a surgery. I said, okay, let me try something. I started my yoga practice and whatever, and I've been practicing since. And I've been testing myself. I do long distance cycling. I do all kinds of things to test myself to see if my knee breaks someday. So the thing that I told myself is, okay, anyway, worst thing that will happen is I'll fall off. Right? It's not, and then somebody will take me to the hospital. Then you can do a surgery. Anyway, if I can't move, until that point, let me try. Right? It's very important to have mindsets that help you overcome your pain. Because sometimes nothing happens. You have some little bit, there is some pain. Now, what will happen at the worst? You just need to replace your arm. That's it. Not so bad. You may get a better arm. Right? So what I'm saying is, be a little fearless about approaching pain. Be a little bit more intelligent about approaching pain. Sometimes there is a pain. There's always going to be some pain or the other. Why do I teach this Buddha's dukkha doctrine? There is dukkha everywhere. This is also part of that. And it's very important to understand there's going to be some pain here or there. If you don't, it doesn't mean that the moment you stop yoga, you'll not have pain. You'll have pains of other kinds. That's it. If you do yoga, you'll say, okay, I have pain here. Otherwise, you don't know what pain you have. You're getting irritated on someone, you're shouting at someone else, somebody else is screaming at you. That is also pain. You can't tell it here, it can tell it here. That's it. Right? But there is pain. So it's just a matter of trying to understand and a matter of trying to push yourself a little bit. Work with the pain, be a little bit more intelligent, attack it from different angles. Try to see if the pain is real. And if it's real, if it's an injury, then you take rest. Okay, I've tried all kinds of things and it looks like, if I try a little bit more, it's going to break. Then okay. But until then, don't categorize it as, this is not, maybe Ashtanga is not meant for me. Maybe I am not meant for Ashtanga. What is that? Nothing like that. Anybody can do the practice. The practice will adapt itself. Everybody doesn't have to do the practice the same way. When you think that I have to do the same way as somebody else is doing, then you may feel, I'm not meant for it. But you can do it the way you can, the way your body allows you. There's absolutely nothing stopping you from doing that. So just adjust the practice to where you are, right? And like I said, I also teach, anicca. I also teach impermanence. Pain also will go away. Someday you keep doing, pain will also go away. Someday it'll go, right? Only thing is, when I say these things, I also have to say, if you share this slide like with someone, I have to make sure that I'm not sued. So if it's an injury, consult an expert. That's not what I believe in, but you should do. Okay. So the body and then the mind. So the practice also is about the mind. That's where Vipassana is, right? So Vipassana is observe your breathing, observe your body, observe your mind, observe your emotions, observe your thoughts. And find a way to lead your mind. Say, okay, I want to go to practice today. I want to meditate. I want to do something good. I want to work. I want to be productive. Lead your mind rather than being led by your mind. You say, okay, let's sleep today. That is when your mind is hypnotizing you. Don't be in hypnosis. Okay, be awake. Right? So very important. And when you meditate more, you will observe your mindsets better. You'll say, okay, I'm feeling irritated today. I was feeling angry. That's why, I couldn't practice properly. I was just being distracted. That's why I couldn't practice properly. So use that as a feedback to understand, oh, when I'm distracted, I don't practice well. The moment you just give that feedback to your mind will start learning to be calm when you practice. It's very simple. Just observation can change a lot of things. Just non-judgmental observation of what is happening can change everything. Right? Very, very important. So let your mindset, let your meditation strengthen your mindset. Let your mindset strengthen your meditation. Right? So that's pretty much it. That's most of the content I have. We'll take a look at my diet. Before that, I just have, a summary, right? At least, 45 minutes or an hour of yoga every day, 45 minutes or an hour of meditation every day. Whole food, plant-based diet. I always say eat less. I don't. That is for people who sue me only sufficiently, but eat less. Okay. But eat I should say eat sufficiently, because sometimes the practice is pretty demanding. So eat enough nutrition, moderate lifestyle, and sufficient rest. Try and stay away from addiction to anything. Yeah. So this is to just kind of introduce my day, to give you an idea. So I wake up early and do my practice and teaching, and then it's my breakfast about 9:30 after my practice, and then I have something at 11. I have something at 1, and that's between 9:30 and 1, I have had 80-90% of my food for the day. And then there's dinner. Depends. Dinner is there. Sometimes it's not there. Sometimes it's just a fruit. But sometimes it's heavy also. I sometimes play in the evening. If it's too taxing, I eat a little bit. But the importance of routine, or importance of some of this, is to adjust your diet daily, meaning adjust the quantity of what you eat daily. If you have not had a very active day, eat less. Be conscious. If you've had a very active day, eat a little bit more, because your body will be able to take it. So adjust. Don't eat same stuff, same thing, same quantity every day. Don't do that, because your body is not going through the same process every day. Sometimes you've had a very hard day, you've had a lot of physical work, eat a little bit more that day. If someday it's been, you've been just lazing around, it's been your dream day, dreaming whole day, don't eat that day. Continue to dream, right? Don't eat. Very simple. So do eat. The quantity should be determined that day. It's not, you don't eat for future. You eat for that day. Please understand. Try to eat for that day. So your quantities, make sure it's adjusting to the day of your eating. So this is my diet. I just thought I'll put it up because there are a few things that come up here. I have a protein drink every day. That's after as soon as I go back home after teaching. Sometimes I have it at 5 in the morning also. Sometimes I have had a heavy practice, and I feel if I come directly to teach, then I might collapse. So I have my drink, and then come to teach. And then a standard, South Indian breakfast. Most of the breakfast is kind of vegan friendly. Most of it, like an idli or a dosa. Well, dosa, you have to tell him that whatever oil he's put already there is enough. Doesn't need to add anything else. An oil free, or that one dosa can kill you. That much ghee and butter and puts on it. And I have something at 11 o'clock. I have something that's more to just keep the energy up. crave for, I used to like sweets a lot. I still do, but once you become vegan, it becomes difficult. You don't get anything. Everything has milk. So you have to do with chickies and stuff like that. Uh, and then lunch, a standard lunch, um, with a focus on vegetables rather than on vegetables, proteins. I don't know how clear this is. Oh, it's worse on the screen. I'm right. Sometimes so there is. If you look at these are three different meals. It's not one meal. Okay. I just took photos on three consecutive days to just kind of, you know, for whatever reason, but uh, it's not like one meal. It's three different meals. So if you see there is a combination of vegetables, there's a combination of protein. I think this is chickpeas. This is groundnuts. So there's always a protein intake. There's a soup. There's some rice. I'm mostly rice. I do eat chapatis, but very rarely. When nobody at home can tolerate my rice anymore, then chapatis. But otherwise, it's mostly rice. Salads. Um, a lot of just raw vegetables and fruits. I just put whatever, all kind of vegetables and fruits and protein. And if you can put rice as well, you just cook brown rice or red rice and just put it into the salad. It's fantastic. Have a salad with cruciferous vegetables, different colors of fruits, and a little bit of salt, and have some chickpeas or Haskell, and there's so many legumes, few legumes that are boiled, and just throw in some rice on it. That's it. It's a fantastic meal. You don't have to even go through the rasam, sambar, masala, because sometimes it bothers me. So because it's much lighter if you eat this way. You feel much freer. You feel much more energetic, right? So but of course you have to adjust to your place of living, your surroundings, and the human beings that are supporting you. So within the constraints, do what you can. Okay. And dinner generally is very light. Sometimes just a fruit. Right. Okay. And so I do experiment, try to not eat sometimes a few days at a stretch. And then I'm very dynamic in terms of like trying to make a decision on the food. It's just at the moment. Sometimes I just feel okay, today I'll not eat and I'll not eat. It's not something, I don't follow a schedule. Just I leave it to how I feel that day. But initially, when you're building a routine, you need to follow a schedule. It's good to have a fasting schedule. It's good to have an eating schedule. Meaning, it's good to say, okay, I'll not eat after 7 p.m. Let me see what happens. So it's good to build a habit. But later, all habits are, there are no good habits. All habits are bad. At some point, you have to be alive enough to do what is required at the moment, not just go by habit. Right? But for that, you need to build the intelligence and the wisdom and the experience and the knowledge. And for those things, you need all good habits. You need to experiment. But at some point, you can just be dynamic. You can have a good meal and sleep. You may not have a problem also. But you need to do it with awareness. Maybe because you're feeling that your body is getting depleted, that you've had too much activity and you need something to nourish the body. At that point, maybe you can, right? Not just because you have a habit of eating and sleeping, right? So sometimes you can bend a little bit, but that is when you experience that for your own and you understand how it works, right? Otherwise, having a routine helps. Okay, that's all I have. It's been a long talk.